I watched my daughter-in-law scrape the roasted chicken into the trash. The potatoes followed, then the green beans I had blanched and sautéed with almonds, the way Robert used to love them. The ceramic dish made a hollow sound against the side of the garbage can, and I felt that sound somewhere deep in my chest, in a place that had grown accustomed to swallowing things down. "Boys," Jennifer called over her shoulder, not looking at me. "Pizza's here." My grandsons thundered past me in the hallway as if I were a coat rack, 16 and 14 years old, and I could not remember the last time either of them had said hello when they came home from school. They smelled like teenage sweat and that sharp chemical scent of energy drinks. Tyler grabbed 3 slices before sitting down. Mason took the box. I stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the dining room, my hands still damp from washing the roasting pan. I had spent 3 hours preparing that meal. The chicken had been on sale at the grocery store, the good organic kind that cost almost $12. I had used my own money. I always used my own money now. Jennifer set paper plates on the table, the flimsy kind that buckled under the weight of a single slice. She had not set a place for me. I noticed this in the way you notice a familiar ache, something that has been there so long you almost forget it is pain. "There's pizza if you want some," she said, finally glancing in my direction. Her voice was not unkind. It was worse than that. It was absent, the way you might speak to someone whose presence you have stopped registering entirely. I did not want pizza. I wanted to sit at my own table and eat the meal I had prepared. I wanted someone to say it smelled good, or that the chicken was tender, or even just to say thank you. I wanted to be seen. But I did not say any of these things. "I'm not hungry," I said instead, and turned back toward my room. Behind me, I heard Tyler say something about the new video game he wanted, and Jennifer's distracted murmur of agreement. I heard the rustle of the pizza box, the crack of a soda can opening. I heard the absence of my own voice in that room. I closed my bedroom door with care, the way I had learned to do everything in this house, quietly, without disruption, without taking up space. My room was at the back of the house, the smallest bedroom, the one that used to be David's office before he and Jennifer decided they needed a bigger workspace upstairs. They had moved me in here after Robert died, after David convinced me I should not live alone anymore, that the big house was too much for me, that I would be safer here with family. I had believed him. I had wanted to believe him. The room smelled like the lavender sachets I kept in my dresser drawers, a small rebellion against the chemical air fresheners Jennifer plugged into every outlet. My narrow bed was made with the quilt Robert's mother had sewn for our wedding, the stitches still tight after 53 years. On the nightstand sat a photograph of Robert and me on our 40th anniversary, both of us squinting into the sun, his arm around my shoulders. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled open the nightstand drawer. Under the spare reading glasses and the crossword puzzle books I kept for the nights when sleep would not come, I found what I was looking for: the deed to the house. My house. The house Robert and I had bought in 1985 when David was 10 years old and still thought his mother hung the moon. The house where I had raised my son, where I had nursed Robert through his final illness, where I had lived alone for 8 months before David showed up with his worried face and his gentle insistence that I could not manage on my own. I pulled the document out and unfolded it with hands that had started to shake. The paper was thick, official, slightly yellowed at the edges. My name was there in black ink next to Robert's, no one else's. I had never added David's name, though he had asked me to shortly after I moved in. For legal purposes, he had said, to make things easier down the road. I had said I would think about it. I had never thought about it again. Some part of me, some small voice I had been ignoring for years, had known better. I refolded the deed and placed it back in the drawer under the crossword puzzles where no one would think to look. Then I sat very still in the growing darkness, listening to the muffled sounds of my family in the other room. Their laughter, their easy conversation, their world that had no space for me. The smell of pizza drifted under my door, mixing with the lavender, and I thought about the chicken in the garbage can. 3 hours of my time, $12 of my money, thrown away without a second thought, not even a second thought. I did not sleep that night. I lay in the darkness and listened to the house settle around me, the creaks and sighs of the walls, the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. These were the sounds of my house, the house I had lived in for 40 years, and yet I felt like a stranger in it now, like someone who had been given permission to stay but not to belong. It had not always been this way. When David first suggested I move in those raw weeks after Robert's funeral, when I could barely remember to eat, when the silence of the empty house pressed against me like a physical weight, I had thought it was kindness. I had thought it was love. My son wanting to take care of his mother. My grandsons excited to have Grandma living with them. Jennifer welcoming me with what seemed like genuine warmth. You shouldn't be alone, David had said, holding both my hands across Robert's dining room table, his eyes wet with concern. Dad would want to know you're taken care of. We have plenty of space. The boys would love it. And Jennifer. He had glanced at his wife, who nodded encouragingly. Jennifer could use the help, honestly. With her schedule and the boys' activities, another adult in the house would be a blessing. A blessing. I had wanted to be a blessing. I had wanted to be useful. I had wanted to not be alone. So I had said yes. The first few months had been tolerable. I helped with the cooking, which I had always enjoyed. I did the grocery shopping, ran errands, picked up the boys from school when Jennifer's therapy practice ran late. I folded laundry. I cleaned bathrooms. I kept myself small and helpful and unobtrusive. I told myself this was family. This was how families worked. You helped each other. But somewhere along the way, helping had turned into something else, into expectation, into obligation, into the assumption that my time, my energy, my presence were simply available, always, without question or gratitude. Somewhere along the way, I had become invisible. It happened in increments so small, I barely noticed each one. Jennifer stopped asking if I wanted to join them for dinner and started simply calling me when food was on the table, if she called me at all. David stopped inquiring about my day and started listing things that needed to be done around the house. The boys stopped saying goodnight. I became the person who did the dishes, who bought the toilet paper, who remembered when the car needed an oil change. I became a function, a convenience, a live-in housekeeper who did not require a salary, only the smallest bedroom and the pretense of belonging. And I had allowed it. That was the part that sat like a stone in my chest as I lay awake in the darkness. I had allowed it. I had smiled and nodded and said, of course, happy to help, whatever you need. I had made myself smaller and smaller, trying to take up less space, trying to be less of a burden, until I had nearly disappeared completely. The memory of the roasted chicken in the trash can kept replaying in my mind. The sound of the ceramic dish against the plastic bag. The casual way Jennifer had scraped away 3 hours of my effort without even pausing. The way she had not even apologized, because you do not apologize to furniture when you move it aside. You do not apologize to a coat rack when you hang your jacket on it. I got out of bed at 5:30 in the morning, the way I had every morning for 50 years. My joints ached as I stood, a familiar complaint that I had learned to ignore. I dressed carefully, choosing the navy slacks and the cream blouse I used to wear to church before I had stopped going. Jennifer and David slept late on Saturdays, and the boys would not surface until noon. I had the house to myself in these early hours, and I used the time the way a prisoner might use a moment of unobserved freedom. In the bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror for longer than usual. 74 years old. Grey hair cut short because it was easier to manage that way. Lines around my eyes and mouth, the map of a life lived. My mother's cheekbones. Robert's favourite smile, the one he used to say could light up a room. When had I stopped smiling like that? I touched the wedding ring I still wore, the thin gold band that Robert had slipped onto my finger in 1970 when we were both 22 and thought we had forever. The metal was warm from my skin. I turned it absently, a habit I had developed over the years, a way of reminding myself that I had been loved once, that I had been seen. I made coffee in the silent kitchen using the French press I had bought for myself because Jennifer only drank herbal tea and David had switched to some expensive espresso machine that I did not know how to operate. I poured the coffee into Robert's favourite mug, the one with the faded university logo, and I sat at the kitchen table in the pre-dawn light and tried to remember who I had been before I became invisible. I had been a teacher, 5th grade, for 32 years. I had been good at it. The children had loved me. Parents had requested me specifically. I had won teaching awards. I had made a difference. I had been a wife. Robert and I had travelled, back when we could still afford it. We had hiked parts of the Appalachian Trail. We had seen the Grand Canyon. We had slow danced in our living room to records from the 60s. We had laughed together almost every day. I had been a mother. I had raised David to be kind, to be thoughtful, to stand up for people who could not stand up for themselves. I had taught him to cook, to read for pleasure, to appreciate the quiet moments. I had loved him with a fierceness that sometimes frightened me in its intensity. When had that David disappeared? Or had he ever existed at all, and I had simply been looking at him through the lens of my own hopes? I finished the coffee and rinsed the mug in the sink, drying it carefully and putting it back in the cabinet. Then I went to my room and took the house deed from the nightstand drawer. I slipped it into my purse. I left a note on the kitchen table. Gone out. Back later. Mum, vague enough to be true, specific enough that they would not worry if they noticed I was gone at all. I picked up my car keys from the hook by the door, the keys to the 12-year-old Honda that I had bought with my teacher's pension, and I walked out of my house into the pale morning light. Thomas Wright's law office occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian on Main Street, above a coffee shop that I remembered as a hardware store from 40 years ago. I had not been here since Robert and I updated our wills in 2018, 3 years before he died. Thomas had handled the estate, had walked me through the paperwork with patience and a gentleness that never felt condescending. I climbed the narrow stairs slowly, my hand on the railing. Each step felt deliberate, intentional, like I was climbing toward something rather than running from it. The waiting room was empty this early on a Saturday. Thomas worked weekends for his older clients, the ones who had known him since he was fresh out of law school, the ones who remembered his father. I was one of those clients. The receptionist looked up from her computer and smiled with recognition. "Mrs. Harrison, good morning. Mr. Wright said you'd called. Go right in." His office smelled like old books and lemon furniture polish. Thomas stood when I entered, coming around his desk to shake my hand. He was in his early 60s now, his hair more grey than brown, but his grip was firm and his eyes were sharp behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "Eleanor," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk, "it's good to see you, though I confess Your call this morning surprised me. You said it was urgent? I sat down and placed my purse in my lap. For a moment, I could not speak. The words I had been rehearsing in the car on the drive over seemed to have evaporated, leaving only a tight feeling in my throat and a trembling in my hands. Thomas waited. He was good at waiting. I need to serve an eviction notice, I said finally. The words came out steady, clearer than I had expected. A 30-day notice for my son and his family. If he was shocked, he did not show it. He simply nodded slowly and picked up a legal pad. Tell me what's happened. So I did. I told him about moving in after Robert died, about gradually becoming the unpaid help, about dinners scraped into the trash, about birthdays forgotten, about being excluded from family decisions, family meals, family conversations, about the boys who walked past me as if I were not there, about my son who had stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me only as a convenience. I told him about lying awake last night and realizing that I had given them everything, including my dignity, and they had taken it all without hesitation because I had never once suggested they should not. Thomas wrote nothing on his legal pad. He simply listened, his expression carefully neutral, and when I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me directly. The house is solely in your name, he said. It was not a question, but I nodded anyway. And David and his family have been living there as your guests, not as tenants with a lease agreement? Yes. Have you discussed this with David? Have you told him you want them to leave? No, I said, because he will try to talk me out of it. He will tell me I am being unreasonable. He will say I am confused or grieving, or that I don't really mean it. He will make me feel guilty for wanting my own space back, for wanting to be treated with basic respect in my own home. Thomas studied me for a long moment. Then he said, very gently, Eleanor, I have known you for 35 years. I have never once heard you speak with anger. You are angry now. Yes, I said. And then, because it felt important to be precise, I am furious. But I am also very, very tired. He nodded. A formal eviction notice will make this real in a way that a conversation will not. There will be no negotiation, no argument. 30 days is the legal minimum in this state for family members living in your home without a lease. After that, if they have not left, I can file for a formal eviction order through the courts, though I suspect it will not come to that. I don't want it to come to that either, I said. I just want them to take me seriously. I want them to understand that this is not a request. This is not something they can talk me out of. Thomas pulled a form from his desk drawer and began filling it out. His handwriting was neat and precise. I will draft the notice and have it ready for you to serve by this afternoon. I recommend you serve it in the presence of a witness, or better yet, allow me to serve it for you. That maintains professional distance and makes it clear this is a legal matter, not a family dispute. No, I said, I want to serve it myself. I need them to see that this is my decision. He looked up from the form and met my eyes. All right, but Eleanor, you should know that this will likely damage your relationship with your son, perhaps permanently. Yes, I said, I know. What I did not say, because it felt too raw to speak aloud, was that the relationship was already damaged, that it had been damaged for a long time, that you cannot permanently break something that is already broken. Thomas finished the form and slid it across the desk. This gives them 30 days from the date of service to vacate the premises. They are required to remove all personal belongings and return the house to the condition it was in when they arrived. If they fail to comply, we proceed with formal eviction proceedings. I looked down at the paper. Black ink on white paper. Legal language that meant, "This is my house, you have to leave." "There is one more thing," Thomas said. "Your will currently names David as the primary beneficiary of your estate. Given the circumstances, you may want to consider whether that still reflects your wishes." I had not thought about that. Or perhaps I had been deliberately not thinking about it. "Can we change it?" I asked. "Absolutely. We can draft a new will that divides your estate differently, or names a different primary beneficiary, or establishes a trust. That would be a separate appointment, but I can schedule it for next week if you'd liked." "I would like that," I said. "I need to think about what I want. But yes, schedule it." Thomas wrote something on his calendar. Then he looked at me again with that expression I could not quite read, something like respect mixed with concern. "Eleanor, I have to ask, are you certain about this? Not because I think you are wrong, but because I want to make sure you have considered all the implications. This is a significant step." "I have considered them," I said. "For years I have been considering them. Last night I finally stopped considering and started deciding." He nodded slowly. "Then I will have these papers ready for you by 2 o'clock this afternoon. Come by and pick them up, and I will walk you through exactly how to serve them." I stood, and he walked me to the door. As I was leaving, he said, "Eleanor." I turned. "Your husband would be proud of you." My throat tightened. I managed to nod, and then I walked out into the morning that suddenly felt impossibly bright. The bank was 3 blocks away. I drove there instead of walking, even though the weather was mild and I could have used the air. But I needed the privacy of my car, the enclosed space where I could sit for a moment in the parking lot and steady my breathing before walking through those glass doors. The bank where Robert and I had kept our accounts for 47 years. The bank where we had deposited his paychecks and my teacher's salary, where we had taken out the mortgage for the house, where we had slowly, carefully built the modest savings that had allowed us to retire with dignity. After Robert died, David had convinced me to add him to the checking account. "Just in case," he had said, "in case you need help managing things, in case something happens and the bills need to be paid. I had not wanted to, but I had been so tired in those early months, so hollowed out by grief, and it had seemed easier to just agree to let him help, to not have to think about money on top of everything else I was not thinking about. I should have known better. At first, it had been small things: a charge for the boys' sports equipment, Jennifer's therapy conference registration, a new laptop for David's work, always with a text message explanation, always with the promise that he would transfer the money back from his account. He never did. And I never asked him to, because asking would have meant acknowledging what was happening, and acknowledging it would have required me to do something about it, and doing something would have meant conflict. So I said nothing and watched my savings slowly diminish, month by month, charge by charge. Until this morning, when I had checked my account balance on my phone and discovered I had less than $3,000 left of the $47,000 Robert and I had saved over a lifetime of careful spending. $44,000 gone in 2 years. I walked into the bank with the house deed in my purse and a check register that told a story I had been refusing to read. The branch manager, Patricia Chen, recognized me immediately. She had been handling our accounts since she started as a teller 15 years ago. Now she had an office with a glass door and a nameplate, and she smiled warmly as she waved me inside. "Mrs. Harrison, it's wonderful to see you. How can I help you today?" I sat down across from her and placed the check register on her desk. "I need to close the joint checking account and open a new one, in my name only." Patricia's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Professional, of course. Let me pull up your account information." She typed something on her computer, her eyes scanning the screen. Then she paused. Her expression changed, becoming carefully neutral in the way people do when they have seen something they wish they had not. "I see," she said quietly. "There have been quite a few withdrawals." $44,000 worth, I said, "over the past 2 years." Patricia looked at me, and I saw something in her expression that I recognized because I had felt it so many times myself. Pity. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm so sorry. If there has been unauthorized activity on your account, we can." "It was not unauthorized," I said. "My son is on the account. He had every legal right to withdraw that money. I just..." Starched it again. I did not know the extent of it. I was not paying attention. The professional mask slipped slightly. Patricia was perhaps 40 years old, married, probably had children of her own. She looked at me with something more than pity now, something that might have been recognition. "Let's open that new account," she said. It took 30 minutes to complete the paperwork, closing the joint account, opening a new individual account, transferring the remaining balance, setting up new debit cards and check orders and online banking access. removing David's name from everything. With each signature, I felt something shift inside me, a weight lifting, a door closing. "Is there anything else I can do for you today?" Patricia asked when we were finished. I hesitated. Then I said, "Yes. I need to know how to set up direct deposit for my pension. It has been going into the old account." "Of course. I can help you with that. Do you have your pension information with you?" I did. I had brought everything, all the documents I would need to sever every financial tie that bound me to my son's goodwill. The pension account numbers, the Social Security direct deposit forms, the information for the small investment account Robert had set up with his life insurance money. One by one, Patricia helped me redirect everything to the new account, my money, my name only. When we were finished, she printed out a summary sheet and slid it across the desk. "You're all set. The new cards should arrive in 7 to 10 business days. In the meantime, I can give you a temporary debit card you can use immediately." "Thank you," I said. And then, because it felt important to acknowledge what had just happened, what she had witnessed, "Thank you for not asking questions." Patricia met my eyes. "We see this more often than you might think," she said quietly. "Adult children with access to elderly parents' accounts. Sometimes it is practical, sometimes it is—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes it becomes something else." I nodded. I did not trust myself to speak. "You are doing the right thing," she said. "For what it's worth. You are protecting yourself." I folded the summary sheet and put it in my purse next to the house deed and the eviction notice Thomas would have ready this afternoon. I walked out of the bank into the bright noon sunshine and sat in my car for a long time, my hands resting on the steering wheel, my breath coming in slow, steady counts. $44,000. My son had taken $44,000 from me, and I had let him. But he would not take anything else. Not my home, not my dignity, not one more day of my life. I picked up the eviction notice from Thomas's office at 2:00. He had it ready in a sealed envelope, crisp and official, along with a notarized copy for my records. He walked me through the language one more time, explaining that I needed to hand it directly to David, that I should have someone present as a witness if possible, that I should not engage in debate or discussion when serving it. Simply state that this is a legal notice requiring them to vacate in 30 days, he said. If they want to discuss it, tell them to contact me. Do not get drawn into an argument. I nodded, though I knew that would be the hardest part. Not arguing, not explaining, not apologizing. I drove home slowly, the envelope on the passenger seat beside me. The afternoon sun filtered through the windshield, warming my hands on the steering wheel. I felt strangely calm, hollow but calm, like something essential had been scooped out of me, and I was lighter for its absence. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw that David's car was there, Jennifer's too. It was Saturday afternoon. They would all be home. Good. I sat in the car for a moment, looking at the house. My house. White siding that needed repainting, green shutters, the azalea bushes along the front walk that Robert had planted the year we moved in, the porch where I used to sit with my morning coffee before I gave up that space to make room for everyone else. I tried to remember the last time I had sat on that porch. Months, maybe, or longer. I picked up the envelope and my purse and walked to the front door. My hands were steady as I turned the key. Inside, I could hear the television in the living room. A basketball game, the announcers' voices rising and falling with the action. I set my purse on the small table by the door and held the envelope against my chest like a shield. David was on the couch, his feet on the coffee table. Tyler and Mason were sprawled on the floor, controllers in their hands, some video game paused on the screen. Jennifer was in the kitchen. I could hear her opening and closing cabinet doors. I walked into the living room. No one looked up. "David," I said, "I need to speak with you." He glanced at me briefly, then back at the television. "Can it wait? Game's almost over." "No," I said, "it cannot wait." Something in my voice made him look at me again, more carefully this time. He must have seen something in my face because he reached for the remote and muted the television. The sudden silence felt enormous. "What's wrong?" he asked. I held out the envelope. "This is a formal eviction notice. You, Jennifer, and the boys have 30 days to find another place to live." For a long moment, no one moved. Tyler looked up from his phone. Mason's controller slipped from his hands. David stared at the envelope as if it were written in a language he did not understand. Then he laughed, not a real laugh, but the short, disbelieving bark of someone who thinks they have misheard. "What?" "You heard me," I said. My voice did not shake. 30 days. The notice is dated today. You need to leave." David stood up slowly. "Mum, what are you talking about? Is this a joke?" "No." Jennifer appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What's going on?" "She's trying to kick us out," David said, his voice rising. "She's actually trying to kick us out of the house." "This is my house," I said, surprised by how clear my voice sounded. "It has always been my house. You have been living here as my guests. Now I would like my guests to leave." "Your guests?" David's face was flushing red. "We have been taking care of you. You moved in with us because you couldn't manage on your own." "No," I said. "I moved into my own house because you convinced me I couldn't manage alone. Then you proceeded to treat me like unpaid domestic help. I cooked, I cleaned, I ran your errands, I paid for your groceries with my pension, and yesterday I watched Jennifer throw a meal I spent 3 hours preparing into the garbage without so much as a thank you. That's what this is about?" Jennifer stepped forward, her expression a mix of confusion and irritation. "You're upset about dinner?" "I am upset about 2 years of being invisible," I said. about being taken for granted, about having $44,000 withdrawn from my bank account without permission, about being treated like a burden in my own home. David's face went pale. I was going to pay that back. No, I said, you were not. Because if you were going to pay it back, you would have done it already. You would have asked before taking it. You would have at least acknowledged what you were doing. That money was for the family, he said, for all of us. That money was mine and Robert's. We saved it over 40 years of work, and you spent it in 2. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Tyler and Mason had shrunk back against the wall, their eyes wide. Jennifer's mouth was open, no words coming out. David stood frozen, the envelope still in his hand. I have already closed the joint bank account, I continued. My pension and Social Security now go to an account in my name only. I met with my lawyer this morning to begin revising my will, and I am serving you with formal notice that you have 30 days to vacate my property. Mum, David's voice cracked. You can't be serious. I am very serious. Where are we supposed to go? That is not my problem. The words came out harder than I intended, but I did not soften them. You have jobs, you have income, you can afford to rent an apartment like every other family with 2 working adults. You will figure it out. You're being selfish, Jennifer said suddenly, her voice sharp. We opened our home to you. You opened my home to me, I corrected, and I am no longer willing to be invisible in it. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, suspended silence. David tried to talk to me exactly once on the 3rd day. He knocked on my bedroom door in the evening, his voice careful through the wood. Mum, can we please discuss this like adults? I did not answer. After a moment, I heard his footsteps retreat down the hallway. Jennifer stopped speaking to me entirely. She moved through the house like I was not there, which was almost funny, given that I had been complaining about exactly that for 2 years. But there was a difference between being invisible out of habit and being invisible out of spite. One was neglect, the other was punishment. I discovered I preferred the punishment. At least it was honest. The boys avoided me completely, slipping past my room on their way to and from school, as if proximity might somehow implicate them in the conflict. I did not blame them. They were teenagers. This was their parents' failure, not theirs. I spent most of my time in my room or taking long walks through the neighborhood while they packed. I could hear them sometimes, the sounds of boxes being filled, drawers emptying, the scrape of furniture being moved. I could feel the house slowly returning to me, room by room, space by space. I changed the locks the day after serving the notice. The locksmith came while David was at work, and I watched him remove the old deadbolt and install a new one, keying it to 2 bright brass keys that had never been in my son's pocket. "How many copies do you want?" the locksmith asked. 2, I said. Just 2. He handed them to me, and I closed my fingers around the metal, warm from his hands. I had not realized how much power there was in a key until I held ones that no one else possessed. On the 15th day, David left an envelope on the kitchen counter with my name on it. Inside was a check for $15,000 and a note written in his familiar cramped handwriting. "This is what I can manage right now. I'll pay back the rest when I can." I looked at the check for a long time. 15,000 out of 44 was barely a third, and "when I can" was not a timeline. It was a delay disguised as a promise, the same way "I'll pay you back" had been a promise he never intended to keep. I tore up the check, not because I did not want the money back. I did, every dollar of it, but because accepting 15,000 in partial payment would be accepting his version of the story, the one where he was doing his best and I was being unreasonable. It would be letting him rewrite 2 years of taking without asking into a simple misunderstanding, a mistake that could be fixed with an installment plan and an apology. I put the pieces in an envelope and left it on his pillow with a note, "See you in small claims court." I met with Thomas the following week to file the claim and finalize my new will. The will now divided my estate among 3 charities Robert and I had supported: the local food bank, the public library, and a scholarship fund for low-income students at the elementary school where I had taught. David was no longer mentioned. "This is your choice," Thomas reminded me as I signed the final page. "You can change it again at any time if circumstances shift." "They will not shift," I said. On day 29, I woke to the sound of a moving truck in the driveway. I stayed in my room until I heard it pull away, until I heard David's car start and drive off, until I heard Jennifer's SUV follow. Then I waited another hour just to be certain. When I finally emerged, the house was empty. Not empty of furniture. They had left the living room couch and the kitchen table, things that had been here when they moved in, but empty of them. Their noise, their mess, their presence. I walked through each room slowly. The master bedroom, where I had not slept in 2 years. The second bedroom that had been Tyler's, still smelling faintly of teenage boy. Mason's room with its scraped walls where posters had hung. The bathroom with its clean counters, no more Jennifer's hair products crowding every surface. My house. Empty, silent, mine. I opened every window in the house. It was the first thing I did after walking through the empty rooms, after standing in the doorway of the master bedroom and remembering how it used to be when Robert was alive. I went from window to window, unlocking the latches that had been painted shut, pushing up the sashes that had not moved in years. Fresh air poured in, cool and clean, carrying with it the scent of cut grass and late spring flowers. The house exhaled. I spent the rest of that first day cleaning, not the surface cleaning I had been doing for 2 years, The quick wipe-downs and vacuum passes that kept things tolerable. Real cleaning. The kind that required moving furniture and scrubbing baseboards and washing windows until they were clear enough to disappear. I found things as I cleaned. A half-empty energy drink can shoved behind the couch. 3 pairs of Jennifer's shoes in the hall closet. One of Tyler's hoodies crumpled under the bathroom sink. I put them all in a box by the front door with a note. Your things, pick up by appointment only. I did not expect them to make an appointment. I was right. In the master bedroom, I stripped the bed that Jennifer and David had been sleeping in and washed the sheets in hot water. Then I made it up fresh with the good linens I had stored in the closet, the ones with the high thread count that Robert used to say felt like sleeping in a cloud. I moved my clothes from the small bedroom back into the walk-in closet, hanging each item with care. That night, for the first time in 2 years, I slept in my own bed. I woke at dawn to silence. Not the oppressive silence of loneliness, but something different. Something that felt like space, like possibility. I made coffee in my kitchen using Robert's mug, and I sat at the table by the window and watched the sun come up. No one rushed past me, no one interrupted my thoughts, no one needed anything from me that I was not willing to give. The mail came at 10. I sorted through it standing at the counter, dropping the junk mail in the recycling bin, setting aside the bills. There was a letter from David's attorney, he had retained one apparently, requesting mediation before the small claims hearing. I set it aside for Thomas to handle. There was a bank statement for my new account, showing my pension and social security deposits from the past 2 weeks. The balance was growing instead of shrinking. I picked up the phone and called my friend Diane, the one I had not spoken to in over a year because I had been too ashamed to admit how badly I had let things deteriorate. She answered on the 3rd ring. Eleanor? Oh my God, Eleanor, I've been worried sick. Are you all right? I am now, I said, and then, because it felt good to say it, because it felt like stepping back into a version of myself I had almost forgotten existed. Are you free for lunch today? I have so much to tell you. We met at the small cafe on Main Street, the one with the good soup and the homemade bread. Diane hugged me so hard I felt my ribs compress, and when she pulled back, her eyes were wet. You look different, she said. Lighter, maybe? I don't know, just different. I kicked David out, I said simply. I took my house back. I told her everything over bowls of butternut squash soup and crusty bread with butter. The 2 years of being invisible, the dinner in the trash, the money taken from my account, the eviction notice, the locks, the empty house. Diane listened without interrupting, her hand reaching across the table halfway through to grip mine. When I finished, she said, I am so proud of you, and so furious at David I could spit. That boy, after everything you did for him. He is not a boy anymore, I said, and I did too much. I let him take too much. You were grieving. You were vulnerable. He took advantage of that. Yes, I said, he did. But I am not vulnerable anymore. We finished lunch and walked through town together, stopping in the bookstore where I bought 3 novels I had been wanting to read, then the garden centre where I picked out seeds for tomatoes and basil and zinnias. When Diane dropped me off at home, she hugged me again. You call me if you need anything, she said. Anything at all. I will, I said. Thank you for not judging me. For what? For surviving. For figuring out when enough was enough. Never. Inside, I put the novels on my nightstand and the seeds on the kitchen counter. Then I walked out to the backyard where Robert's garden bed still sat, overgrown with weeds now, neglected for 2 years because I had been too tired and too busy taking care of everyone else to take care of the things I actually loved. I knelt in the dirt and began pulling weeds, my hands remembering the motion, the rhythm. The earth was soft from spring rain. The work was hard and good. My knees protested, my back ached, but underneath the discomfort was something I had not felt in a very long time. Peace. Not happiness, not yet, but peace. The kind that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are supposed to be, doing exactly what you are meant to be doing. 3 months later, I cooked dinner for myself on a Tuesday evening. Nothing fancy. Roasted chicken with herbs the way Robert liked it, potatoes with rosemary, green beans. I set the table with real plates and cloth napkins, poured myself a glass of wine, and I ate slowly, tasting everything, savouring the silence that was no longer lonely but companionable. The house had settled into itself over these months. It had become mine again, not just legally, but in all the small ways that matter. The kitchen smelled like my cooking. The bathroom held only my things. The master bedroom had my books on the nightstand, my reading glasses on the dresser, my slippers by the bed. I had painted the living room a soft sage green, the colour I had always wanted, but Robert thought was too bold. I had bought a new armchair for the corner by the window, the one with the good light for reading. I had hung my mother's watercolours in the hallway, the ones that had been stored in the attic for years because Jennifer said they did not match her decor. My house, my colours, my choices. David had sent one letter, forwarded through Thomas. It was 3 pages long, single-spaced, detailing all the ways I had hurt him, disappointed him, failed to understand his intentions. There was no apology in it, no acknowledgement of what he had done, just a list of my deficiencies as a mother, as a person. As someone who should have been more grateful for their care. I read it once, then I put it in a drawer and did not look at it again. The small claims court had ruled in my favour. David was required to repay the full $44,000 in monthly installments of $500. It would take 7 years. I would be 81 by the time I saw the last payment, if I lived that long. But it was not really about the money anymore. It was about the acknowledgement, the official record that said this was not a gift, this was theft. You took what was not yours to take. The garden was coming in now, tomatoes heavy on the vine, basil spreading in fragrant bushes, zinnias blooming in bright pinks and yellows along the fence line. I spent an hour each evening out there, my hands in the soil, the setting sun warm on my shoulders. Diane came by twice a week. We played cards, we gossiped about the neighbours, we talked about our children with the weary honesty of mothers who have learned that love does not always mean respect, and respect cannot be assumed simply because someone shares your blood. Some days I felt lonely. Some days I looked at the photographs of David as a child and wondered where that sweet boy had gone, and whether I had somehow failed him in ways I still could not see. Some days I regretted the necessary severing, the price I had paid for peace. But most days I felt free. If you are reading this and you recognize yourself, the mother, the grandmother, the one who says yes when you mean no, the one who gives and gives until there is nothing left but the expectation of your giving, I want you to know something. Your silence is not kindness, it is erasure. Your accommodation is not love, it is disappearance. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to change your mind about arrangements that no longer serve you, even if you agreed to them once, even if they benefit people you love. You are allowed to choose yourself. It will cost you. I will not pretend otherwise. There will be anger. There will be accusation. You will be called selfish, ungrateful, unreasonable. You will lose relationships you thought were permanent. You will spend nights wondering if you are wrong, if you have made a terrible mistake. But you will also wake up in your own bed. You will sit at your own table. You will move through your own space without apology. And slowly, carefully, you will remember who you were before you became invisible. That person is still there. She is waiting, and she is worth reclaiming. I am 74 years old. I have tomatoes in my garden and books on my nightstand and silence that belongs to me. I have friends who see me and a bank account that is growing and a house with locks that only I can open. I am not invisible anymore, and neither are you.